And then why are you wearing a Buster collar? Morning. Hi, Sally. Wilma doesn't seem to be connected very well to audio. It keeps spinning. Can you hear me okay? That's better. Settled it.
Ooh. I can't see if we're all in there.
That's a good view with Wilma. That's a good view. I can see lots of puppy there. Joe's got, well, that's fantastic. Yep, see a puppy there. Oh, yeah, a little pie. That'll do. I've got a floor. You'll just have to move to the back a bit so we can see. Right, we've got lots. Not quite there. Give them 2 minutes to see who else is going to turn up. Hello. It's always funny when you put your phone down on the floor or your computer on the floor because the puppies almost always want to get their faces right in it. And he'll show you, I'm sure, when we get training. He always goes straight over to camera.
There we go. As long as it doesn't fall.
Just going to juggle you about a bit, so I might just turn my camera off for a second. She does. Do it on my phone.
How's that?
Yeah. Okay.
I know, nearly.
Maybe need some more there. Oh. Okay. Touch the camera. Touch the camera. You're not funny. Don't touch it. Good boy.
Good boy. Yeah. And always when we're doing it, just flick it up on the.
So, is everybody in? What time are we at? 10 o'clock. So I'll make a start. So I've got a few bits. So you, if you just mute yourself if you haven't, because otherwise I've got to get all the way up to reach the desk. And someone else is waiting, so bear with me. Oh, too old for this job. Okay. So we can see Dodo's in a right crazy playy mood. So hopefully he'll be in the mood for learning something. Yeah, so we'll see if we can get him calmed down first and focusing. So a really fun game actually to help them to focus is with that wanting to teach them to touch the bell. Who was that? Put your hand up if it was you. Brilliant. So the easiest way to teach that is first to teach them the idea of putting their nose on something gets rewarded. So what we need to do is we need to make a plan. So you know what your final goal is. You know that your final goal is that you want the dog to touch that thing with their nose. There's somebody else waiting to come in. Oh. You know that your final goal is wanting them to touch something with their nose. Some dogs are pawry dogs. He's a pawry dog. He would rather touch stuff with his foot. So we need to make it really simple in the first stages. We need to make the first step so easy for the dog that they're not going to get it wrong. What have you found? You got sniffy sniffs on. Okay, we need to make it so simple. So the easiest way is first choose something that it's not possible or very difficult for them to pick up. So I've got a 2p coin. Hello, he says, what's that? Can I eat it? That's your first response, isn't it? It's not food. Okay, and we're not going to put that down on the floor. He says, I'm desperately sure that's food. We're not going to put that, sit please. Wait. We're not going to put it on the floor until we're absolutely ready. So we get a plan of action going. Can I balance that without you falling over? I don't think I can. Bear with me. I want you to be able to see a bit more floor. Oh, phone doesn't want to play. Stop it, darling. You're not helping. You're not helping. There we go. There's a bit more floor. So I've got my little target ready, and I need a handful of treats ready. Okay? Because the very first time the dog investigates that object, I want the food to be available, because I'm going to go really, really quick here. I'm going to put the reward onto that target after he's put his nose towards it. So I put the target down. Yes, and I put the treat right on top of it. Now he keeps his nose near it, and if he doesn't, that's fine. I'm going to move it slightly. Yes, and I'm going to put that reward directly on it. Yes. So I'm not doing paws. He's a pawsy dog. Yeah? So if he paws, I'm not going to mark it. I'm not going to reward it. I want nose. Yes. And somebody else waiting to come in. Okay. Does everybody understand that? I don't know what you're getting, but if you're getting it okay and you can see and you can understand, can you give me a thumbs up? Anybody not sure or want to give me a sideways thumb? Okay, so your goal is, as soon as they move their nose towards it, mark it, yes, and put that food onto the target. Yes. Yes. If it's paws, I'm not marking, I'm not rewarding. Don't want paws, Because my criteria, my final goal is that they're going to touch it with their nose. All right, if you've got a palsy dog, don't worry about it. Just don't mark toward it. Yes. You got 2 for that one. Yes. 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 Okay, and remember, when you've done a little session, take that target out of play. Don't just leave it laying around, because your dog won't understand and you will mess up your training if there's a target in view that you've been using and you stop reinforcing it. Okay, give that a go. I can't sit on the floor very long because I'm old, so I'm going to move you up here a little bit. Oh. Let's have a look what you've got. Show me your stuff. Come here, monkey. Good lad. All right. So it can be a little bit frustrating to begin with, but you just have to be really quick, really look for any. Now, if they don't touch it, if they give up, you touch it, move it slightly, mark as soon as they put their nose on it, and get that food onto the target. So we want to make sure our mark happens while the nose is still in touch with the target. And remember, keep your treat hands still in between times so that they're not distracted back to your food. Keep those reward hands out of play. So we're not starting with the noise button or the bell or anything straight away, because you've got 2 separate levels there. First, we want the confidence to touch something with your nose. What if the noise is a little bit aversive to the dog? What if every time they touch that object, that noise makes them want to move away from it? So we need to do that as a separate thing. Okay, beautiful. Is everybody happy with that? Did you get your first stage with that? So we're catching, so it's capturing the dog putting their nose on there. We are marking it exactly the right time when they're doing it. And to help them, we are placing the reinforcement directly onto that object that we're using to train. All right. The next stage, if the puppy's ready for it, don't rush. Do lots and lots at the first stage. Don't be in a rush to move on. The next stage is we reward away from the target so that they are learning to come back to the target. Okay. So that's really important. Remember to rename yourself with your dog's name and your name. Okay. Remember to rename yourself with your dog's name and your name so it helps me when I'm talking to you. Has anybody not seen the first move towards your object? Anybody really sticky with paws at the minute? So Steph and Bert, tell me.
He just wants to sit and look. He doesn't want to go towards the target.
Fine. So an intermediate stage that you could put in for him, because he is more confident about hands, is holding it. Yes. Yeah. Start a stage backwards. Add an extra step to make it easier. And especially if you've already taught them or you've started to teach them the hand touch, then transferring it onto a target which is in your hand, yes, is easier for them. And then you can slowly move it towards the ground until it's on the ground. Does that make sense to everybody? Anybody else got any issues, problems? What you got, Joe? Is that a thumbs up or a question? Thumbs up, brilliant. Do keep reinforcing me because, you know, it's easy to start thinking you're getting it wrong. So the next stage would be, as I say, we're going to still mark the nose when it's on the target, but we are going to reinforce them away from it. Okay, so I've got this plan in my head before I start training. I need to know exactly what my plan is. All right, so as soon as this goes down, I'm going to mark for nose contact, reward away. Yes. Yes. So now, did you see he tried to pick it up? That's why it's really important to start with an object that's impossible to pick up. Because I don't want him to get reinforced accidentally for picking it up. If it's going to be your marker bell or your sound bell and you want them to push it with their nose, we don't want them picking it up and getting it wrong. Yes. So I'm rewarding away. Yes. So he needs to learn to come back to it. And that was pause. Yes. Yes. So can you see he's going in with his paws, but then he's going with his nose. If I keep my marker word at exactly the right time, eventually that behavior of going in with the paws should start to reduce. The problem is, if he always goes in with his paws, then I might chain those two behaviors together. He might believe that he needs to touch it with his paw and then with his nose in order to earn the reward. He might put those two behaviors, chain them together. So we need to be very, very quick here. So I would take him back to the previous stage and make sure that I'm marking only for nose contact. Does that make sense to everybody? Taking my target away because we don't need targets laying around. I need some new knees. I'm going to have to sit up because I'm far too old for this malarkey. Whoa. Luckily, I have a footstool. All right, so have a go. Either stay at the level that you were at. Let's make sure that we are definitely marking at the right time. That we're definitely, if you're at the stage where you're still putting the food onto the target, then stay at that stage. If you're not there yet and you need it in your hand in order to get the puppy interested in touching that target in your hand, then do it that way and slowly, slowly move it closer to the ground. It's about building their confidence to try new things, you know. If they're not sure, if you change something, if you do something new, sometimes they'll kind of balk at it and get worried about it. I think Wilma's got it. She's starting to understand that concept. Go back to that object. Is it Woody or Baxter today? Can't remember. Woody, brilliant. So he's a little bit confuddled at the moment, but don't worry. One thing we don't want to do when we're trying to introduce a new idea to the dog is don't get stressy about it. Just put in smaller, easier stages. Think about how can I make this easier for the dog to get it right? And then you can slowly start to grow towards your final goal. If we keep pushing and pushing and pushing, the dog just gets more upset, more confused, less likely to offer the right behaviors. And even if they do offer the right behaviors, their brain is so fuzzy at that stage that they won't remember what it was that they did to get it right. So we need to keep them in thinking mode and keep them in happy mode. All right, so that's how to teach them to go to the bell or the buzzer or whatever it is with their nose, you might choose that you would prefer that they slap something with their foot. You know, so it's the same process. In your mind, when you make your plan, you would say, I'm going to mark for foot contact instead of nose contact. So it's when it's really on you, it's not on the dog. You need to have a really good plan. You have to know exactly what you're going to do, what your stages are that you're going to work your dog through, and you need to be ready right at the very beginning, because it's those very first behaviors, the very first time they try something, they need to get that right. We need to set it up so that they will. Everybody happy? Yes-ish? Give us a thumbs up if you're okay. Anybody with a wobble? We've got a wobble. Go on then. Talk to me. You can unmute yourself. Let me ask you and then you can see.
Hi. Sorry, I've missed the last 2 weeks due to internet issues. And I was late today. Smack on the wrist. Bella's not getting the, because I was joined in late, the coin. She goes with the nose straight away. I've got a bell thing hanging on the door for her to ring to go to the loo. She seems frightened of it.
Okay. So we were saying the reason that we need to use something that doesn't make a noise to begin with is that we want that ability to understand touching your nose with something is going to be rewarded. Because
Right.
if you've got where the noise might also make them worried, then that's going to slow your training down. So the first part is teaching them to be confident to bump things with their nose.
Right, okay, thank you.
That we're using a coin or something very small so that they can't also learn to pick it up.
Right, okay, yeah.
All right, is that okay? Yeah, I'll mute you again. All right, anybody else with a wiggle or a wobble before we go on to something else? No? All happy? Give me some reinforcement so I know. Bravo. Right. So, she says, lunging her body up to her notepad. So everybody, I think almost everybody, was really concerned about jumping up. So the first thing I would say about jumping up is a very puppy behavior. It's a very normal behavior for puppies. And it's not something really that I want you to worry about. Because if you do get stressy and worried and angry with your puppy, what you can be doing is actually making it happen more. So I sent you a Word document, which should be attached to your WhatsApp group. And I want you to honestly answer those questions. Now you can get the feeling, and Dodo was the worst jumpy up puppy I've ever owned in my life. It just drove me absolutely batty and really painful as well. Very scrapey, very scratchy, digging his nails in, trying to climb up me basically. And yeah, he had me in tears. It was horrible. But if we start getting upset and angry with that behavior, what we might actually be doing is making it worse. Because quite often with puppies, it's based in anxiety and needing reassurance and wanting to be up to the face, wanting to be close to your breath. Your puppy wants to smell whether or not you're okay. They want to know direct information from your mouth. And quite often when they're very tiny, they get it because we bring them up to us. And then they get to this stage where that's not appropriate anymore. But there's this big gap between our mouth, because we're upright objects, there's a big gap between our mouths and the floor. So they start to learn to jump up. And sometimes we will encourage that when they're very tiny. We won't go all the way down to them. We'll have them come halfway up to us. So they've got this history of reinforcement. And then we start to mess about with their heads and we start to say, oh, you're too big now, don't do that anymore. But we don't actually teach them. We don't teach them to keep their feet on the floor. So what we're going to do today is to show you what I mean by teaching them to keep their feet on the floor. Is everybody on board with that? Any questions at the minute about that bit? No? Okay. So I'm going to bring you back upstairs onto the table. Oh. So over the lockdown period, I ordered a lot of money's worth of desk camera. Guess what happened? Didn't arrive, did it? So that's a lot of money I invested that didn't happen. So I was going to have 2 separate cameras, one so I could just sit up on my desk, and another one which is my phone. And yeah, failed miserably. So here's a Dodo, the most jumpy up dog I've ever owned. Yeah. The first thing you need to know about jumping up is your pup's not doing it to annoy you. They're not doing it. They do annoy you. It is annoying. It is painful. I don't disagree with your emotions. I was in tears when after 3 weeks he was still ripping bits out of my clothes and still, awful, awful puppy. You were horrible. And he sometimes forgets even now. But what I need you to really understand here is that they're not doing it to make you feel something. They're doing it because they want and need something. Okay? So what we're going to do with Doe is I'm going to do some behaviours that might get him to get it wrong. And I want to show you how I react when he gets it wrong. Okay? My goal behaviour is anything other than feet on me. I'm not looking for a specific behaviour. I'm looking for anything other than feet on me. So here we go. We're getting wound up a little bit. See if we can get him encouraged to come up. And he's getting so good at this now. All right. So I'm going to reward that because it can't be any more perfect, can it? How's about I have, because that's a hard one for him, a tub of, oh, there we go. So I'm rewarding him choosing not to get excited about the food. Okay, so I'm dropping the food onto the floor. So that one was no good for showing you getting it wrong, is it? All right, so with your puppies, who will get it wrong much better than Dodo does. He was a really, really good demo dog for this when he was tiny. He was really good for teaching classes when he was tiny because he spent pretty much all of his time on his back legs. With your tiny puppies, what I want you to do is get the reward in before the feed. Your goal is get that reward to the floor before the paws come up. So how on earth do you do that? Well, what you do, you throw one away, encourage them back, and get a treat in as they're on their way back. So you get exciting and you move excitedly, but all the rewards are going on the floor. The reward goes away from you a bit, so they've got a little distance to come back before their feet come up. And your goal is to get that reward in before the feet start to rise. All right, so that's your game. Throw a little treat on the floor. Come on, puppy, 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 woo! Get that treat down there before those feet get onto you. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah, so you need a decent amount of treats in your hand because you need to be rewarding very frequently for the right choice. And I'm going to watch you. I'm going to see what you can do. All right, darlings. If you've got problems, ask me, just wave. If you're not sure, let me know. Is that a Woody? Do you want a wave? Go on then, talk to me.
He's not jumping up, but he's the worst at jumping up when he sees you, when he wants a cuddle. He's really bad at it, but he's not doing it at the minute. That's why I bought Woody today, because he always jumps up.
All right, so the point is, if your dog learns that something works, then they're going to do it more. So what you need to ask for yourself is, when you first come in, are you doing something that might be encouraging him to believe that jumping up is the right thing to do? Now, you may not be. And it might just be that in that occasion, he's so overexcited to see you, he's so in love with you, that he really wants to greet. So I would try changing the picture a little bit. I would say to myself, well, I know the dog's going to go crazy. Can I leave the shopping in the car or on the doorstep, get my dog greeting done, and then when he's calmed down a bit, go back and pick up my stuff? Yeah, until I'm trained, when I'm carrying a carrier bag, you still get rewards on the floor. When I come in through the front door and I've been away for 5 minutes, you still get treats on the floor. So they're training issues. In the meantime, rather than letting the puppy get more and more upset and worried about, well, why does it work sometimes? Why doesn't it work other times? Get that greeting out of the way, get that excitement sorted. And greet where you want them to greet. Bring yourself down to them. Yeah? Get to their level so they can smell your breath and they can see that you're still fine. And you're not going to be coming home then and immediately starting shouting at the dog, because I think a lot of the time separation anxiety issues can relate to the fact that you come home and you're all stressed out from the dog's point of view. Well, the dog thinks, well, what on earth happens when you're out there? Do I need to worry about it? Yeah?
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Right. So, anyone else, any questions or problems? Did you see it working? Now I'm going to twist your brain a little bit. I'm going to twist your brain a little bit. Follow me. I found this a hard concept to understand. Do you know that one of the very best ways to teach your dog not to jump up is to teach them to jump up? Do you want me to say that again? It's a bit mad. If you put jumping up on cue and you reinforce when it's appropriate for them to practice that behavior, then by not asking for it, you are helping them to understand when it's not appropriate. Does that make sense? So it's a hard concept. So how do you teach them to jump up? Well, first of all, they're doing it already. So you could choose to capture when it's appropriate. You could choose to give reinforcement for that. I think that's a very dodgy way to go, because it's a bit wishy-washy for the dog. So I like to give a really clear signal that it's actually okay. Yeah, this is when we are training you and teaching you. Now is a good time to jump up. All right, so Dodo, his reinforcement for jumping up now doesn't have to be food, because he loves to jump up. He loves to be physically touched. So if I go, Dodo, come on then. Yeah. All right. So I've got a really obvious body language cue and verbal cue that says to him, you can jump on me. I've also got a really obvious, he says I get reinforced for getting off though. Come on, bud. He's waiting for his treats. So I've got a really obvious way of telling him as well with my body language that now you need to get off. So don't. Good boy. Off. Good boy. And off gets reinforced with food on the floor. Remember that being touched, if they're jumping up quite often, being touched is the reward. So you don't need to, as they're older and they start to understand, you don't need to use food. But to begin with, you might need to use food. So you could choose to lure them onto you and reward them up here, wherever your puppy's level is. So if they're at knee level, you could reward them there. You might choose to make it fancy. You might choose to say, well, you can only jump up me when I give you this signal. Put hold on there. So when my arm is in front of me, for example, and then you can have a load of attention. Off. Good boy. All right. So what I want you to do is see if you can, to begin with, to keep it nice and calm, let's use a lure to put them onto you. So you can give that whatever verbal cue you like. So for most people, it makes sense to say up, yeah? Or you can use a tapping your arm and using the lure to lure them onto your arm. Remember that these tiny babies can't stand on their back legs for long. So don't keep them up for very long. I want you to reward off much more often than you are rewarding them for coming up. All right. So let's have a look what you can do, and then you can ask questions if you're having problems. Oh, cute. All right, boy. So use the Rebecca with Alison, sorry, with Willow. Put the food onto the nose. Lure that nose up and over your arm. So you keep connection with the nose. It'll stretch the nose towards you. Yeah. So I'll show you with Dodo in a minute if you're not sure. That's it. You get in there. All right. If you see them hanging back and not offering behavior, it's because they're not sure. It's because they're getting mixed up. Yeah, so if they start to go still or holding back, it can be that they're doing something that they've been reinforced for before and they're hoping that they're making the right choice. So they're a bit muddled up, they're a bit mixed up, all right? It can be if you are doing the right thing and you are reinforcing off on the floor more often than on, you might find that they're starting to be reluctant to offer the jumping up behavior, which, to be honest, that's what we want, really, don't we? So it's about kind of playing with the idea a little bit. Sometimes you're going to reinforce when they're up, sometimes you're going to reinforce when they're off, but generally speaking, more reinforcement for keeping your paws on the floor with a puppy than for getting up, because it's self-reinforcing getting up. Okay, everybody happy with that? Do you understand the concept? Even though I think it's quite a hard concept to understand, the whole idea of teaching your dog to jump on you so that you can teach them not to jump on you seems a bit odd to me. It's a very similar technique for puppies who bark for things that they want, which is called the woof shush training technique, where basically you reward them for woofing to begin with, and you teach them to woof on command. And then you teach them, by using that, you teach them when it's not appropriate to woof. So, okay, so we'll go see if we can fit in what we normally teach on this, on your last class. And on your last class, we normally teach, to start teaching, how to stay on command. Okay, how to stay where you are when I've told you to put yourself into a position. Now, remember, always have this real clear goal in your brain of exactly what you're teaching. So you might have a final goal at some point in the future that your dog is going to stay where you put them for 2 whole minutes while you go out of the room, you know? But that is not going to be possible if your dog doesn't understand the concept of stay there for 1 second. Or stay there for 1 second while I move around. or stay there for 1 second while I move around and there's other things going on in the background. Okay, we have to start right at the very simplest concept for the dog so we can help them to get it and not get it wrong. All right, so first thing I would do is have a behavior that your dog's already really solid at. So if they're really solid in the sit, use that. If they're really solid in the down, use that. It's sometimes easier for the dog if you have a target position for them, so a mat or something that helps the brain to sort of focus on the fact, oh, I'm definitely in the right position. So some people use plastic bowls or sort of stage mats or yoga type gym mats, something that just has something your dog can look at and say, yes, I'm definitely in this position. I know I'm getting it right. Okay. With Dodo, I'm not going to do that, but just kind of assume that I am for the purposes of the video. Okay. Assume that he is being put into a position. So break it up into tiny steps. Remember, if you make it too hard to begin with, your dog's going to get it wrong. They're going to keep getting up. They're practicing moving. We don't want them practicing moving. We want them practicing staying where we put them. So I'm going to ask him for a behavior that he knows. I'm not going to move away from him. To begin with, I'm going to start saying to him, can you, I'm saying it in my mind, can you stay in that position while I move a little bit? If you can, I'm going to reward you. If I move a little bit, can you stay there? If your puppy can't stay there, don't do as much movement. The aim is for them to get it right a lot. Okay. When they're really, really good at it, staying in that position, we can start to introduce a signal. You can say your word, your cue, your verbal cue, but imagine if it's a windy day or you're next to a road or, you know, there's all sorts of other distractions going on. A hand signal, I think, is a really good thing to have. So mine is one I can hold away from my body. I can make it really visible from a distance, and it always means the same thing. So I say stay, and give my hand signal, and I'm going to start slowly increasing distance and the length of time that they have to do it. If your puppy keeps getting up and moving, you're asking for too much. You need to put smaller steps in place. Okay, so eventually you should be able to, forgot to remind him, that's trainer error, sit, stay. Eventually you should be able to turn your backs on them, do proper full-on dances, wave your arms around, do things like wiggle your bum in their face, okay? We want to see some really silly behaviours. Remember, if your puppy keeps getting it wrong, it's not their fault. Just take them back, reassure them, and offer to do something slightly easier. Good boy, very nice. What's that say? Luna can stay quite well and has since early on, but when she makes her breakfast, so that's really hard, isn't it? Can you imagine if I told you in the pizza place to wait until you couldn't have your pizza until everybody else had eaten theirs, for example? So break it up into smaller stages. She used to, yeah. So there will be something that's changing. Either you're not reinforcing it often enough, the behavior that you do want, or some way she's getting reinforced by somebody else. Somebody else is doing something that's making her think that it's moving towards you is more likely to be reinforced than moving away. One thing I quite often find people doing is when you put your dog back into the stay, don't reward. Okay, so if your dog breaks the stay and you take them back to that stay, don't give a reinforcement there. Do a little bit and then reinforce. Okay, because if you take them back and reward them, what you might have accidentally done is taught them that you're going to keep coming to them to take them back to that place to reinforce them there. So, but remember, if they have broken that stay, we need to make sure the next trial, the next go is easier. Don't keep making it harder if they're getting it wrong. Stay there. Okay, so the next thing, if you have a really good aim and your puppy has a really good catch, then you can start reinforcing them without even going back to them. Or if you're really good at rolling the food towards them. Yeah? So, show you what I mean, hopefully. Oops. Balancing the phone, easier said than done. Touch the phone, am I still there? I am. Okay. So there's Dodo. Come on in the corner so they can see you. Go in there. Go in. Sit. Go in there. Turn around. Sit. Go in there. Good boy. Go in there. Come here. Sit. He says, I don't understand this concept of putting my bum into there. This is when you find out that your dog trainer hasn't practiced something. Okay, go. Sit. Dodo. Come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. Sit. 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 Sit there. Good boy. He says, I really don't want my back in there. I don't know why, but we haven't practiced that. So he doesn't, something, he's probably worried that some of those things that are in that corner will fall on him. So we'll do it here. Sit. Stay there. So if I want to come away from him, I don't want to go back to him. Having a dog that can catch, stay, sit, stay. That's one way I can start to teach him. The rewards are still going to come to you without me coming to you. And he says, I'd rather do a down stay. Down. Good, stay. Does that make sense? So I could also, can't get a really good angle for you because my phone wants to fall over. Ooh, try that. So I could also, if my dog doesn't catch very well, I could roll. So I roll it back to where I wanted him to be. Stay. Down. So I can reinforce by rolling. Now you can see my aim on this floor because it's a solid floor. The treat is tending to roll, which means he's tending to get up and move, which is not what I want to reinforce. Don't want to reinforce movement if I'm teaching a stay. I want to reinforce stillness. Okay, let's have a look at these chats. Yeah, it's annoying if your dog used to do something, but there will be a reason. Come here, babe. There will be a reason. So we just need to analyze it a little bit more. I need you to really look at the picture and think, what's reinforcing the dog for movement when I would rather that they stay? What can I change that will help the dog to understand? Stay there. Don't use a reward when you've replaced them. Take them back. Don't give them a reward. Just place them. And then remember the next trial, the next criteria in your mind should be lower. You make it easier. With Bert, if you get him barking or a behavior that you don't like, it can be a sign that they're getting frustrated, that they're not sure what they're doing, or they're not sure that they're doing it right. So you might consider dropping criteria a little bit with that one as well. Make it easy for a bit, or change and practice a different behavior, something that they're really good at, so that you can reassure them that actually we're okay. I'm not getting upset with you. You just, yeah, so, but don't get into the habit of trying to get rid of one behavior while you're teaching another, unless they are opposites. So sit is a really nice behavior to teach if you're trying to get rid of jumping up, but barking's a hard one to teach when you're also teaching them something else, because they tend to bark when they're not sure. Okay, so we swap it up, change it up. Okay, so when you're teaching a stay, whether that be a down stay or whatever, we don't want the dog to practice coming away from that stay. And that means that we don't ever, and we should never, call them to us away from a stay. All right, so we don't call them to us to get the reward. We always go to them to give them the reward. But how does your dog know when you get into the my dog can do 5 minutes down stay while I'm cutting vegetables or whatever level you're working at? How does your dog know when it's okay to move? Because one of the things that we can really mess up is if we don't give them a finished, this exercise is over cue, then we leave them to decide whether or not it's over. And if we leave them to decide whether or not it's over, they're actually practicing breaking that stay. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah? So we need to have a way of saying, I don't need you to stay there anymore. And we call that a release cue. So the release cue can be anything that makes sense to you. Yeah? It can be anything simple as okay. But if it were okay, and I've really fallen into this trap myself, words and that you tend to use in normal conversation, you are going to say, yeah? And especially when I'm teaching, when I'm training, I will quite often accidentally give my dogs a release cue. And that's my fault. That's not their fault. They're listening for that release cue. They're expecting it, and they're going to take it as that exercise is over. So other ideas are finished. Finished is a nice one, which I think that Kiko Pup, Emily Larham uses. Really cute one that I really love is go do dog stuff. Go do dog stuff, like that. Okay. Or all done. Yeah, something that you're not necessarily going to say. And I want you to also link some kind of a hand signal. So quite often, one that I do use is the jazz hands. Look, it's all done. We're gone. Off you pop. Yeah, so something that tells the dog no longer working. You can go do your own thing for a bit. All right. And then we can use their name or an invitation, their recall cue, to ask them to come back and start working with you for a bit. And that on and off is a really good thing for the dog. Okay. So we're going to practice that. We're going to do 5 sits and then release cue. What I want you to remember with your release cue is your dog isn't necessarily going to get it and understand it to begin with. They're not going to understand. So to make it easier for them, we need to change our body language. So if you've been asking for sits, your body language is very specific. You've got a hand signal, you've got a verbal cue, you might be standing near them. You're going to invite them to do it again. You're going to do it 5 times in a row. But then when you've finished and you're not going to do any more, I want you to think of a way of saying to your dog, that's it for a bit. And then don't look at them, don't speak to them, don't interact with them, because otherwise the dog thinks that conversation is continuing. And what I think is a really good example in human terms is, you know, when you've been in with your boss and you've been talking about something, you're having a conversation, and the boss will have a release cue. Every boss is different, but some of them just go, okay, thank you, and then they pick up a phone, you know, and then they don't look at you, they don't talk to you anymore, they just look down, they start writing on their pad or whatever. And that is your release cue. That tells you, off you pop, don't need you anymore. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? Yes-ish? All right, so let's do that. 5 in a row, doing something, interacting with your dog. Can be a sit. Ooh, dropped you. It can be a sit or anything you like. but then I want you to practice that I'm done with you, you know, I don't need you anymore, and really switch off to them at that point after you've given that release cue. So do. Ready? Sit. He's very good. What a good boy. Sit. Good boy. Very nice. Come here. Sit. Good boy. Come here. Sit. Good boy. Off you pop. So because you've just done something with them, they are going to want to keep going with that conversation. They don't know what the release cue means yet. So even Dodo, just now, he's here, he's nagging, he's licking at my fingers, he's trying to get me involved in conversation again. He wants to do it again. Okay, give it a good 30-40 seconds before you start interacting again. So Dodo just went over to investigate whether or not laying on the bed was a good idea. He's come back to nag at me again, which is lovely because I've got a dog who wants to work with me, wants to be involved with me. But I've just told him I don't need him. I don't need him right now. Yeah? So I want him to understand there's times when it's not all about him. And he's allowed to go and be a dog. He doesn't have to focus on me all of the time. Look at those two, Woody and Baxter. They've got it, haven't they? They're like, oh yeah, so you don't want me right now. Okay, we'll just hang out here, just in case you need us. Okay, when you can see that they've switched off to you and they've stopped nagging at you, they're not trying to get you into conversation again, then that's a good time to start that conversation again and do a few more. Okay, right, good man, you ready? He says, I've just took myself back to bed. Good boy, ready? Touch, yes. Touch, yes. Touch, yes. Touch, yes. Touch, yes. Very nice. Good boy, hold on. Luna's overly impressed with the class today, I can see. So, did you notice on this occasion, I'm going the wrong way, Dodo has taken that much quicker. He's just said, oh, okay. So one of the things though, working in this room, he had a lot of experience of this as a tiny puppy because I was studying for my master's. So I'd be spending hours and hours with my back to him and he'd be in the position that he's in just now. So he'd get a little bit of attention, quick toilet, a little bit of training, and then I'd turn my back on him. Yeah, so I've got this really strongly trained cue now that once I'm in this position, nothing that you do is going to get my attention. I'm not going to I didn't let him scream it out. If I was worried that he was getting stressy, I'd give him something to do. I wouldn't just leave him wondering and worrying. But at the same time, if it was just a little bit of woofing, attention demanding, there wasn't a stress sound in it, I wasn't worried that he needed something, so I knew his water was fine, I knew his toilet was fine, I would just wait him out. So it's a bit of a balance going on there. We don't want them to increase in anxiety levels. So remember, once you've got that disconnection, your dog's not nagging and trying to get your attention, you can go do it again, do a different exercise. You know, so you could do a little bit of your exciting recall, and it's going to be hard for them to switch off from something that's exciting into, oh, I just go do my own stuff again. All right, so with Dodo, we could do a little bit of his recall training. Here. 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 Okay, done. Staring at the big screen so that I can see you all. I know my face goes when I'm watching people. So what I'm looking for after you give your release cue, are they able to then go away, leave you alone, not nag at you, realize and understand that you're not available. So it's almost like an on and off switch for your dog. So the hardest part for us is if the puppy is doing behaviors that are really hard to ignore once we've given that release cue. So if they, for example, jump up at us or bark at us or scrape at us or anything like that. And what I want you to do is make it even clearer with your body language that is not going to function. It's not going to work. So if you do find that they're nagging, touching, trying different behaviors to try and make it work, what I want you to do is take your body language quieter, take your body language away from them, walk out of the room if you need to. Yeah, make it very clear that isn't working. You don't have to, in fact, shouting at them or pushing at them or saying or doing anything is just maintaining that conversation. Yeah, so Super Nanny had a way of saying it, didn't she? She used to say, talk to the hand, because the face ain't listening. Make it really clear with your body language, with your attitude. I gave you a release command. I don't need your attention right now. Off you pop. Now, the benefits of this are you've got a dog then who wants to work. They want you to start asking them to do things again. Yeah? So they're starting to listen. Did she say my name? Did she say it now? What about now? Okay, they're starting to watch you from a distance. Did she move? Do I need to follow her? Is she going to ask me to do something? So you've got a dog who is more attentive to you, more likely to want to work. But you've also got a dog who knows, because you've taught them, once you've said or done that physical cue, and it can be both, you can give a verbal and a physical cue. Once you're doing that, there's no point nagging and no point worrying. I can relax, I can settle down. So he's chosen to be down here underneath the desk because there's a bit of sun, apparently. Don't know where that's come from. But yeah, so he can completely switch off because he knows he's not needed. And sometimes I think the dogs that really nag at their owners is because they're not sure whether or not they're needed. So giving them that ability to just go off, do their own thing, not be worrying, not be digging. So I really like it. Okay, so any questions about that bit? And we're all fairly happy. So it is your last one with me of this set of 6. You're welcome to book again. If you just want to try another trainer, there's a lot of really good trainers locally, and I'm happy to suggest ones for you if you found, whatever reasons, you know, if you feel that you need a different personality to train you, or you just want to see other techniques, you want to have a feel around, then get back to us about which trainers we would recommend, because we know which ones have gone through certain types of training themselves and are more likely to teach you using methods that are kind to your dog. But I'd love to keep you. You know, I think there's nothing better for me than really feeling an attachment to owners and to their puppies, because I've known them since they were tiny. And obviously a lot of the puppies that I've trained have left, you know, they've gone into their old age and they've run out of life. And there's such a bitter sweetness as a veterinary nurse when I am one of the ones that also holds their paws and the owner's hands, you know, at the end. So if you do decide to stick with me, that's fantastic. But if you don't want to, I'm not going to take it personally. But what I would like to know is that you are going to continue, because you will mentally, you will promise yourself that you will continue to train. But actually, in real life, with the amount of time pressures that we have, it's really hard to maintain that. And just going to a training class once a week will keep you wanting to try harder, because you'll see other dogs and other people doing better than you, and you think, oh, I need to practice harder. But also it's a bit like driving. You pass your driving test, don't you? And then you develop all these really bad habits. So that being around a trainer will help to keep those habits in check, will help to keep them tight and keep them functioning correctly. But I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you have enjoyed it, please remember, Little Tikes is a baby business, obviously suffering because of the COVID. We can do with as much help as we can get, because we don't have a budget for advertising. So if you've liked it, please do go make a comment. We're on all sorts of places now, obviously on Facebook. There's a Google page, you can leave a review. We're on Twitter, or I'm on Twitter, Instagram. You know, if you can find us or find me, make a comment, get us known to other people. Obviously, if you've hated us, please get back. You know, if I'm doing something wrong, or you feel that you haven't had value for money, then get back to us, because I can't learn and I can't grow if I'm not getting that feedback. But I hope you have enjoyed yourselves. I hope that you have felt that you've learned something. I'm going to give you a chance, if anybody wants to say anything just now, give us a wiggle before we shut off. There's a wiggle there. We'll take Adam, Sam and Wilma first.
Hi. Obviously we've finished this course now. Do you have another course coming on that follows on from where we've left off?
So at the moment, because of time restrictions, because I'm still working as a veterinary nurse, at the moment it's the same course, but I have to tell you this, I don't like the same things all of the time. I don't enjoy it. There are lots of different methods to get the same result. So even if you did the same puppy course again, you wouldn't necessarily see the same techniques again. And I also think that even if I were using the same techniques, it'll be because they're the ones that I feel work best. Even if I'm using those, you're still practicing with somebody watching that you're doing it right. Does that make sense? So even if you're repeating, it's still, I think, beneficial. But, you know, if you wanted to, as I say, go and have a go at a different trainer and see what else is out there, I don't mind, as long as you're using a good trainer. That's my important thing to me. All right, anybody else give us a wiggle? Anyone else want to say anything? Hello, Lisa. Can you unmute yourself?
I just wanted to say thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Nice of you. Makes me all go girly. I'm not very good at taking.
It's been really helpful for me, definitely. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Anyone else? I saw, Joe, you had a wiggle. Did I answer your question with the previous one? Yeah, okay, darling. Right then, if everybody's done, no one else wants to wave at me. What we do, going to have a little bit of a ceremony, a little bit of a goodbye ceremony, because it's your last one. I'd like you all to, I'll ask you to unmute yourselves. We're going to have a cacophony of waves.
Get it.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.